Good morning, and just logging in now. I'm a minute or two late, just getting my stuff together, doing some client check-ins. Let me just pull up whatever notes I have. Today we're going to be talking all about macros. If you're watching this live, definitely let me know that you can hear me. Swapping over here. All right, trying to get some sun in the windows too, because it's a little bit dark in here. So sorry about that. Anyways, so let's talk all about macros. Yesterday we talked all about calories and metabolism and how the reason why we see weight loss is usually because we're in a calorie deficit, not because of the fact that we're on some certain diet. I think that's something important. I would say that most of you had mentioned that you have tried diets in the past, whether they're keto or, what else was there? I think vegan someone threw out there, things like that. And that's very, very normal. We hear these things, we see people that are on them and we see the results that they're getting, and then we try them ourselves, or we're just confused because nutrition is difficult. You know, it's a little bit, we don't talk enough about it. I remember back in health class, they talked about it maybe years ago, but I don't remember beyond that really it coming back up. I mean, besides when I was taking my own nutrition courses in college, but you usually don't talk much about nutrition after probably maybe middle school or something like that. We did not talk about nutrition. So it's so important to be aware about the science behind it. Today we're going to be talking more about macros and things like that, getting into the macro tracking piece of it too. And then tomorrow we're going to be talking about food labels and setting up MyFitnessPal, some actual, strategy things or like tangible tools that you can take away. And then on Thursday, we're going to be talking all about creating a macro balanced plate, some tracking tips that I have for you, how to use a food scale, and really ways to set yourself up for success when it comes to tracking. So with that said, we're going to be talking all about macros, as I mentioned today. And if you check out the workbook, I did not print out those few pages, but I just want to talk about the weight loss versus fat loss kind of concept, because we primarily usually focus on weight loss. I remember always thinking like I need to lose 10 pounds and I need to, see this number on the scale. And that was like that important piece for me to get to. But it wasn't really the weight loss that I was looking for. It was really the fat loss that I was looking for. And because really the number on the scale truly doesn't matter, right? It doesn't define us. It doesn't really matter at all what number it is. No one really cares. It's not like tattooed on our forehead, and we shouldn't be letting it dictate our day when that happens. But the difference between weight loss and fat loss is when it comes to things like crash dieting, things like quick fixes, detox drinks, those things you see in magazines, still like up at the grocery shopping is like, lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, let me try that. That sounds really good. Or you're going on vacation. So you're like, all right, I want to feel good in my bathing suit. So I'm going to go ahead and try this like crazy diet. But you end up like either one, not sticking with it, or then during the vacation you end up gaining it all back. And that's because there is a difference between weight loss and fat loss. And what we really want is fat loss, not weight loss. And that's what's great about macros, because you can get there. So when it comes to weight loss, you may see the scale go down, but your body composition doesn't change. And that's what we kind of talked about yesterday. Strength and fitness usually decrease. So if you are lifting weights, you might notice that you're more fatigued. You're not seeing strength gains in the gym. You could be losing muscle. Your just focus is on burning as many calories as possible. So you're looking at your watch. I remember taking pictures of my watch all the time because I would be like, I'd always have to hit 300 calories for some reason. And there would be days that I would push it even further and I'd be like 400, 500 calories per day. And that's my primary focus. If I didn't hit those calorie ranges, I didn't have a good workout and I wasn't going to see results in my mind. Your metabolism slowly starts to slow down because you are in a severe deficit. Your calories are too low for you. And then you usually see temporary changes, right? So you see it and then you maybe come off that diet and then all of a sudden you see like your weight increase significantly up. And then when it comes to fat loss through tracking macros and lifting weights, and I'm going to talk about the dial movers on Thursday about some of the things that I recommend, is really the solid things that you can start to see that fat loss and consistency when it comes to getting to the body that you want, and that body recomposition changes. So you might see inches lost and body fat is reduced. So you may not see a ton of changes on the scale. I just had a client check in. She lost, she did lose 10 pounds, but she also lost 10 and a half inches. But I had another client that she does her check-ins tomorrow and she's lost 21 inches or something like that, and she's only lost 8 pounds. So everyone's body is different. What you lose, especially if you're a newbie weightlifter or something like that, you may see a lot of changes when it comes to more of the scale staying the same, and then you're just building muscle, and then you're losing inches along. There's no such thing as like muscle weighs more than fat, because 1 pound of muscle obviously weighs the same as 1 pound of fat. It's just that our body, its muscle is a little bit more tighter and condensed, so it looks different, right? So that's why we see the inches lost when we build more muscle. It's not like you're, like changing up the fat and turning into a muscle. It's like you're growing the muscle, reducing the fat. So you may see improved performance and fitness because you're not carrying as much weight on your body, but you're also able to keep that strength up. You shouldn't see a huge decrease in the amount that you're lifting when it comes to strength training when you are in a fat loss phase. And then your focus is getting stronger by lifting weights. There's a huge mental adjustment when you start focusing on strength changes and less about just your body and changing your body, but also that builds up confidence by getting stronger, proving to yourself that you can do like really tough things by lifting heavier weights, and then you're less focused on the aesthetic piece of it. And although I don't have a problem, I think part of this training is about aesthetic goals, but there's something that just happens when you start focusing on building up strength and things like that. It becomes more important, right? And you really focus on the long-term changes, and which is another part of the fat loss piece of it, is you're focused on like the lifestyle changes. That you're not going to be a cut for 365 days a year. You'll be in a cut maybe for like at most like 16, 24 weeks or something like that. You're not going to do that for the entire year. And it's to focus on small changes over time rather than large changes in a small amount of time. And that's the biggest difference. And then your metabolism stays flexible, where you can go into a calorie deficit and see changes and then go back up and go back up to maintenance. So calories are, as I showed in the pyramid yesterday, is the most important thing, but then macros are underneath that, or they were above that in the pyramid that I had shared yesterday. So when we're talking about macros, they are part of calories. So if you're eating foods, any type of food, they all have calories, and they all are part of 1 to 3 macronutrients. And alcohol is a fourth macronutrient. I'm not going to go into big detail there, but it's just something to be aware of, that it is its own macronutrient. So when it comes to macros and things like that, it's so important to kind of release the food labels that we've already put on these foods. Things like carbs are bad, or fat's going to make you fat, or maybe some people even believe like protein's going to make you bulk up or something like that. The mindset shift I talked about yesterday is so important to kind of release some of those things that we've thought about in the past about like, potatoes being bad, or bread's being bad, or oil's bad, or butter's bad, or all this stuff, because that's not going to get you anywhere but just feeling guilty about the foods that you're eating. So when it comes to calories, they're a unit of energy, and there's 3 main macronutrients. They're called macronutrients because they're nutrients that we need in large amounts, and those are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So if you eat food, again, you eat macronutrients. So example of a fat may be butter or oil. So just one thing to be aware of is that there are a lot of foods that have more than one macronutrient. Even something that we hear like an avocado, when I immediately think that's a fat, it is it's high, it does have higher fats in it, but there are some protein and carbs in it as well. And then for an example of a protein, it may be something like meat, or Greek yogurt has a lot of high protein as well. And then an example of carbohydrate is potatoes and breads, but also veggies. And many people think that like when they go low carb, they're going to focus on, including those vegetables and things like that, which is obviously amazing. But even if you're low carb and you're eating vegetables, you are eating carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are our preferred choice of energy. So our body actually prefers those over any other macronutrient for energy, and they are your vital organ. So if you ever felt that brain fog when you go low carb, or just feel really dizzy or off, that is because of that. It helps fuel the brain and heart. It does help with hormonal health as well. I've seen a lot of women that go low carb. It throws off your hormones, and then it helps with the recovery and performance from the gym. So if you aren't eating carbohydrates, in whether you're a runner or someone who does some sort of exercise altogether, you're missing out on something, being able to recover that and improve your performance if you aren't including carbohydrates. when it comes to fats, these can be helpful in hormone and thyroid health. So again, when it comes to, the importance of like your thyroid and your hormones and a good, like reproductive system, but not only just that, but also your other hormones, things like your satiety and like leptin and ghrelin, your hunger hormones can be thrown off as well when you're not focusing enough on your hormonal health, as well as if there are fat soluble vitamins out there, and if you aren't getting enough fat in, your body can't break those down and absorb them, so that you can become deficient if you don't do that. I'm going to talk through in a minute about if you aren't getting enough of each macronutrient, what type of things you can see. So when it comes to protein, this is, probably the one macronutrient that most women are not getting enough of, and even men are not getting enough of these. We tend to undereat protein and overeat carbs and fats because they're more readily available. It's so easy to go to a grocery store or a convenience store and grab some sort of carb or fat source, but not, you don't really get packaged meat or something like that at a grocery store. Maybe you'll get some turkey jerky or something, but that's about it. There are essential macronutrients, and these will be found in things like meats, as far as plant-based, soy, quinoa, and buckwheat are all essential macronutrients. That means that we have to get them out on the outside from our body, and those are ones that are full amino acids. So those ones, things where people may struggle is when you're vegan or vegetarian, getting in enough of these essential amino acids is because you're not eating meat. You kind of decrease the ability to get some of this amino acids in. And the body can potentially use carbs, protein, or fat for energy. They can use basically anything. That's why you can go keto and still get energy from that. But you absolutely need protein specifically to form amino acids in all cells in your body. So you do need protein. It helps build and repair muscle. It can help hair and nail health. I mean, a lot of people, I think it's kind of big right now, is the collagen protein, which can help that. And it helps you feel full longer. So if you're not eating enough protein and you're only focusing on calories, you may notice that if you're not getting enough fiber or enough protein, you may be more hungry than other people that have a more balanced meal based on the same amount of calories that you're having. So you could be having, say, like 1,700 calories a day. And if you're eating mostly maybe carbs and fats and lower in fiber, you may notice that you're super hungry compared to if you're eating the same amount of calories and you're eating enough protein and you're eating enough fiber, then you're going to feel different. Protein is one that actually takes more energy to digest over carbohydrates and fats, which is really great because it can help increase your metabolism. Another reason that we want it to make sure that you're getting enough protein. And like I said, it's the most under-eaten macronutrient, and it can help with immunity and things like that. So I talked about some of the foods that do have it in it. So like something that's like low carb and low protein could be something like a fruit and veggie, right? High carb and low protein is a fruits and vegetables. High carb and low fat could be something like pasta, rice, cereal, bread, legumes, so any type of beans, and these are things like, again, that have multiple macronutrients in them. Higher fats but lower carb is like nuts, seeds, and oils, things like that. And then higher protein, low carb, eggs, although egg yolk has a lot of fat in it, but then other types of meats, fish, things like that. And then high protein, low fat, and like moderate carbs would be things like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, cream cheese, some turkey. I would say like chicken breast, chicken thighs have a little bit more fat in there, so you can get some fat in that way as well. So why not just track calories, right? If we know that, I know you've been telling me like calories are king, then why don't I just care about that? And again, it's because it's more balanced. You could be losing water and not, you could be losing weight, on the scale and just some water, but not, you could be losing muscle as well. So we want to make sure that you're getting enough of each macronutrient so you see the changes you want. You don't want to look, overall health, but if you're looking for making aesthetic changes, you want to make sure you're holding on to that muscle, and you could be losing it if you're not getting enough protein. You're focused on just reduction in calories. So if you are missing out in each macronutrient, I want to cover that as well today. And that could be, if you're missing out on fats, you could have hormonal problems, vitamin deficiencies. If your focus is reducing carbs, you may notice that if you're not getting enough of them, you end up having brain fog, you have fatigue, you have low energy, your sleep can really start to come off. I know a lot of people that go on keto and other things in very low carb just feel really run down and tired and exhausted, and they could be eating the same amount of calories and just feel that way. And then protein, if you're not eating enough protein, you can start to lose muscle, and you can just start, your immune system can kind of come down, hair, nails, things like that can start to look kind of like down and things as well. All right. And definitely drop any questions that you may have about that. I didn't double check that in Facebook. I'll just double check in there. All right, so next I just wanted to cover, kind of start going into the macro tracking piece of it. And although you don't need to go off and take a calculator and figure all this stuff out, it is important to be aware of all these, how many grams of each macronutrient, or how many calories per gram of each macronutrient, because you're going to start to understand a little bit more about food labels and nutrition labels, but also about why we, if you go over in fats, your calories are so much above that rather than if you're going over carbs or protein. So when it comes to how many grams per each macro, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat has 9 calories, and 1 gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. So that's a difference. So protein and carbs have the same amount. Fat is different. It has 9, and then alcohol, I said, is another one, and that is a different macronutrient as well. And so when we talk about how much of each macronutrient, because you're probably like, okay, well, how much should I be getting in? It really is dependent on your body. It depends on your exercise habit. It depends on your preferences too. It depends on how much protein you're already getting in. But the baselines is recommendation by the USDA and the RDA, I think it's RDA, is 10 to 30% of your overall calories should be coming from protein. Fat is anywhere from 20 to 35%. I like to keep most women at 30 to 35%. And then carbohydrates is 45 to 65% is recommended. So the number's up. Like carbohydrates is really up. It's 45 to 65%. And that is why we do need carbohydrates, and not something to be scared of. You definitely want to make sure you're including those in your diet. And I did show you guys in the workbook a little breakdown of what that could look like with those ranges and how that looks. So when we do the calculation to figure out what your macronutrients are, and I always recommend, if you are working with a coach, you should get those, and they shouldn't be based on percentages. They should be based on specific grams per you. And when we talk about grams with protein, carbs, and fats, we're not talking about weighing them. So you could say, don't get confused by when I say, say like chicken, 100 grams of chicken is not the same thing as 100 grams of protein. Those are two different things. So that's why it sometimes can get confusing. I'm going to talk about the food scale too, and I'll talk more about this in detail on the next 2 days as well. But the ranges that I gave you was based on a 1,600 calorie diet. This would obviously be, in my opinion, would be more of a cut diet. This is pretty low in calories. Most women are probably up around like 1,900 to 2,300 calories they need on average, at least, depending on your height, weight, exercise, activity factor, all of that stuff. So you can take a look at that and see what that would look like. So, 1,600 calories, that we multiplied that 1,600 by the percentages. That's how you got the overall calories. And then you would divide that by the number of calories per gram that I talked about earlier in order for you to get those numbers. And that's how we figure it out as far as providing you the grams. But it's usually, we figure out the protein, fats, and carbs based on all the things that I mentioned before about your height, weight, basically your BMR and activity factor to get the overall calories. Then we want to figure out the amount of protein that you need. And this is something that I work with on my clients, that I give them and assign them. Usually sometimes start with just calories and protein to get them adjusted to it and then move up. That's what I do in Responsible Macros. We usually start with calories. You can start with that like the first week, and the second week you can take a little bit deeper dive into the macronutrients. It's just an easier way to start, rather than trying to go all in and getting frustrated and then giving up too early. So when I talk about tracking macros, what is this? So basically it's similar to tracking calories, except you're going to be trying to hit the numbers of macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat when you use something like MyFitnessPal, you would use that as setting those goals in order to make sure that you're hitting those numbers specifically. So those numbers would be specific to you, your activity levels, your personality, because if you do prefer a little bit more carbs over fats, you can make those a little bit more flexible and things like that. And you're going to be trying to reach those specific amount of each of them. And then what flexible dieting is all about is that you have that nice 80%, 20% mix. So that's 80% whole foods, minimally processed foods, and 20% fun foods. So for my day, I might have my more fun foods might be, so what do I really like recently? I do a lot of these vanilla graham goldfish. That's like my 20%, as well as like I do a lot of like breads, or I do like enjoy sweets and things like that. I'm not like someone that's a big on chips, but I will do like pretzel crisps and things like that. And you could, I wouldn't so specifically take 20% of your overall calories to get that 20%, but you could do that if you need to know where you were in a bit of a range to figure out what that 20% looked like in overall calories. So if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, that would be 400 calories worth of like more fun foods. That could be, your pizza nights, your alcohol, your, like date nights and things like that. And the reason why we track macros can help with your body composition, increase muscle, lose fat, maintain, reverse diet, but also see that body composition change, but also fuel your body properly. It's not just about aesthetic goals, it's about really like fueling yourself in the best way you can. And then when you also learn portion sizes, and the end goal is always for you to be an intuitive eater. We're going to do that slowly by having you focus on macros, learn portion sizes, learn what maintenance looks like for you, learn all, tracking during all phases is so important, so you understand how to go onto intuitive eating and maintain your body weight during that time. That's the biggest struggle. People can lose weight all day long, but the problem is they can't maintain it, and that's where we constantly go through that cycle. So that's so important. And when you only track calories, again, you're not getting a balanced diet. So you may be more hungry, you might feel run down, you're under eating one or more macronutrients, the fatigue, muscle loss, energy dips, sleeping off, all of that. So flexible dieting is different because you're able to include all types of foods in it, but also it's macro balanced, making sure you're getting enough of each macronutrient. So when you're constantly dieting and you're constantly just focusing on weight loss, as I mentioned before, you can lose weight but not fat, and then your metabolism does slow down. You end up hitting plateaus, and you have nowhere to go from there. And that's why I like tracking macros. There is a strategy behind it. There is a next step. You hit a plateau, I will figure it out what your next step is, whether you need to just kick up steps a little bit, whether you need to drop macros a little bit, drop calories down a little bit, or are you ready for a reverse diet? Do you need to take a little bit of a diet break or something like that, which is this a jump up to more closer to maintenance, but not exactly at maintenance after you've been in a calorie deficit. You may also notice when you're constantly dieting, like a poor relationship with food, which is an immediate trigger to me that you should be focusing on maintenance temporarily until that improves. And then you may end up, deficient in one of the macronutrients or micronutrients. So if you're getting only carbs, you may be missing out on some other micronutrients or vitamins that are you definitely do need. And so if you've ever tried any of these diets and they don't work for you, or you feel like you're not getting the results, it is probably because you've been under eating, or you're not paying attention enough to this, or you've removed some of your favorite foods or removed certain foods. So like I said, when it comes to having a flexible diet and flexible nutrition, you have that 8% whole foods, which is minimally processed. Things like vegetables, oatmeal, chicken, fruit, things like that. And then 20% could be the enjoyable and things that keep it easy. Keep it easy for you to keep going, right? So you feel good about it. Your quality of life is there. You can go out with friends and have dinner, or go to Chinese food or something like that. And that could be chocolate, wine, chips, any of that stuff. So that is basically everything I'm going to cover today about getting started with tracking macros and the macros in general and how that all breaks down. Tomorrow I'm going to go into a deep dive into nutrition labels and how to read those, because those are sometimes a little bit confusing to figure out whether something is a carb, protein, or fat, or even why sometimes the macros don't add up when you start tracking macros in MyFitnessPal. As well as I'm going to go into a little bit about setting up MyFitnessPal, some of the tips and tricks that I have for you to make it a little bit easier. this is the app that I use. I find it has the biggest database. It's easiest to use, easiest for beginners to start tracking. And I personally have been using it forever. I've tried other ones. I've tried My Macros Plus, but there's other ones out there. I'm just not going to be talking about it today or tomorrow. So that is everything. I'm going to send out a post out there for you guys to drop everything that you've learned today to make sure that you feel like you're retaining some of that. But also, if you have any questions, definitely reach out. I want you guys to be learning. I want you to look through the workbook, try to fill that in. Definitely let me know that you watch this on replay, so I know that you had watched it. And again, if you had any questions, definitely reach out, and I'll make sure to cover those over the next 2 days. And if you haven't joined the waitlist, I'll post the waitlist info out there as well. And for the Responsible Macros, where I'm offering the discounted pricing and early bird. That's what I was trying to think of. Early bird info, all in that email that'll be sent out overall this week. So if you haven't joined the waitlist, definitely go ahead and join that, and you can get out some goodies on the discounted pricing and hear about everything right away. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out. And thank you guys for joining.